Russia is drowning in its own oil. Right now, 135 million barrels of crude oil are rotting at sea. There are no oil refineries, so they have to sell raw crude. But no one is willing to buy that much unrefined oil.
Just as it typically happens with us, of course.
Tankers have been anchored for weeks near Egypt, Singapore, and their own port of Kozmino. And the Kremlin's revenues from oil exports, they just lost another $200 million. And that's just in 1 week. Bloomberg reports this in a recent report. And the numbers there are truly impressive. Why have tankers with Russian oil been unable to find a buyer for weeks? How is this affecting the state of the Russian economy right now? And is the crisis dealing a bigger blow to the Kremlin than yet another one? The 21st package of EU sanctions, which still can't be agreed upon? Find out in this episode. But before we start, give us a like and subscribe to the channel.
Our primary objective is not a Russia without gasoline, but a Ukraine completely free of the presence of Russia.
It brought everyone together in jokes.
Russia's lid is first.
For years, Russia's scheme was simple. They extract oil, process part of it at their own refineries into gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil for the domestic market and the army, and sell the rest abroad using tankers from the so-called shadow fleet, bypassing Western restrictions. The system worked more or less stably until the oil refineries started breaking down one after another. When refining capacities drop out of the scheme, the Kremlin is left with two options: either reduce production or send crude oil abroad, even without a guaranteed buyer. According to OPEC, in June, Russia was producing about 9 million barrels per day, which is approximately 830,000 barrels less than the level agreed upon with its partners in the oil alliance. In other words, there is hardly any room left to further reduce production. That's why Russia has shifted its focus to tankers. Over the 4-week period up to July 20th, seaborne crude oil exports amounted to more than 4 million barrels per day. That's just 10,000 barrels below the record level for the entire period since 2022. Before the full-scale war, about 600,000 barrels were supplied daily to Europe via pipelines. But after this route was effectively closed, Moscow has been trying to export the same volumes by sea. The problem is that exporting doesn't necessarily mean selling. Bloomberg tracked the movement of vessels and found that 5 tankers carrying Urals crude are anchored near the Egyptian port of Masa el Hamra. Another 5 are near the Rio archipelago, close to Singapore, one of the main transshipment points for the shadow fleet. Shipments of Sokol and Sakhalin blend crude have been waiting for weeks to be transferred from shuttle tankers to ocean-going vessels. Even the flagship Espo grade is stuck near the port of Kozmino in the Pacific Ocean. Altogether, this accounted for the same 135 million barrels bobbing at sea as of Sunday, July 12th. Notably, some tankers are even setting out on their voyages without a specified final destination. This is a sign that sellers are looking for buyers for their cargoes on the fly, and this directly affects the money. According to the 4-week average, the gross value of Russia's oil exports was about $1.7 billion per week. That is 200 million less than the previous week. Moreover, Russia is being forced to sell its oil at increasingly lower prices. The benchmark Urals grade now costs just a little over half of its April peak. And now the question that concerns everyone: can this really shake Russia's economy? Problems are already noticeable. In the first half of 2026, Russia's oil and gas revenues fell by almost a quarter. Because of this, the budget deficit has already significantly exceeded the amount planned for the entire year. The Kremlin is patching the hole with the National Welfare Fund, a significant portion of which has shrunk from $113 billion to about $55 billion during the war. And at the current rate, this reserve risks being depleted within a year. At the same time, almost every second ruble of the federal budget is being spent on the war. In other words, strikes on oil refineries hit not just Russia's ability to sell oil. Today, they target the main source of funding for the war: oil and gas revenues, which for years have been the Kremlin's financial cushion. And now let's compare this to the European Union sanctions. Formally, the 21st package of sanctions was supposed to be approved by July 15th, because on this day, the deadline for reviewing the price cap on Russian oil expired. Currently, it is set at around $44 per barrel. And without a new decision, it could have automatically risen to as much as $75 due to the situation around the Strait of Hormuz. But as of today, the package still hasn't been adopted. It is being blocked by Greece and Austria, citing their own concerns in the energy and financial sectors. This creates a paradoxical situation. While diplomats in Brussels spend months coordinating wording and searching for a compromise over a single figure, Ukrainian drones are already physically reducing the amount of oil that Russia is even capable of refining and selling. Sanctions limit the price at which Russian oil can be purchased, but they do not take away Russia's oil itself or its ability to refine it. Strikes on refineries do both at the same time, and this is happening right now. However, sanctions and strikes on infrastructure reinforce each other. The fewer buyers are willing to take risks due to the threat of new restrictions, the harder it is for Russia to get rid of oil, which is already accumulating at sea because of problems with refining. Notably, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators has already reached an agreement with the Trump administration on a new package of sanctions. And it was precisely the fear of such restrictions that previously made some Indian refineries more cautious about buying Russian crude. And here's what these strikes look like, not in Bloomberg reports, but live.
At least 8 drones were used. SPU? It was not for nothing that they traveled almost 1,500 kilometers and our drones reached Tatarstan. In Nizhnekamsk, they struck one of the largest and most modern oil refining complexes, which produces fuel and rubber for the Russian military. There is also a massive fire at the Saratov oil refinery, part of the Rosneft structure.
So, in Russia, there is no longer a single large oil refinery that Ukrainian drones have not reached effectively. We have hit them all. On Monday, we struck the last one, which was still intact at the time, the giant oil refinery in Omsk.
And note, this is 2,500 kilometers from our borders. The Omsk oil refinery in the Federation is the most powerful one, and it operates both for domestic needs and to supply the enemy's army. The economic impact of such long-range sanctions is actually visible even from space.
These are multi-kilometer-long lines for gasoline in Russia. The psychological effect is also obvious. The Russians are frightened. So, is the Russian army even capable of protecting its own strategic infrastructure? Yevgenia Trishchenko reports on this.
Where does Russia's oilification continue?
Send it.
Just in the past week, Ukrainian defense forces have significantly cut back Russia's oil infrastructure. Long-range sanctions have reached the St. Petersburg, Nizhny Novgorod and Yaroslavl oil refineries, as well as the Vysotsk terminal and the oil depot in Kerch.
The larger oil refineries in Russia, there are 11 of them, have all come under drone attacks. Only the Omsk refinery remained.
But the Omsk refinery didn't stay untouched for long.
The oil plant there was blown up. Everything there is on fire.
The Omsk plant in Siberia is one of the largest oil refining enterprises in Russia. Until now, it was considered unreachable because it is 2,500 kilometers from our border. Although there were signs that it was becoming a target, our drones have already reached distant Omsk.
So many people there, some of my acquaintances used to write, yeah, here we're safe as houses, nothing will ever happen to us. They'd say, it's tough in Moscow, in the Moscow region and so on. But here, nothing ever reaches us at all. Well, now it's finally reached us.
And this time the drones hit a record-breaking target.
This is definitely a very high-value target. It's probably the most modern and most powerful factory in Russia. They literally just recently finished another stage of modernization there, which was very expensive.
10% of all oil refining in Russia is done at the Omsk oil refinery. Every year, it processes over 21 million tons of oil. Roughly every 6th liter of Russian gasoline was produced by this very enterprise. They also produce aviation fuel, diesel fuel, and lubricants here. All the things on which the combat capability of the Russian military depends.
The Omsk oil refinery is unique because it produces components that are not available elsewhere at other oil refineries. Today, we clearly understand that diesel fuel, which is the foundation of the Russian military's mobility, is now starting to become scarce.
An impact was recorded on the plant's territory, which caused a fire. In certain areas, there is damage to the overpass with technological pipelines. And most importantly, at least 4 UAVs hit one of the 2 primary oil processing units.
It separates water and salts from the oil so that further refining can be done to extract light petroleum products, gasoline, aviation fuel, and diesel fuel. So we hit the LOU-11 unit, which was supposed to process exactly half of the incoming oil. And now it will be out of operation for us.
This was the deepest long-range strike on enemy territory to date since the start of the full-scale invasion. And along the entire route, Russian air defense did not stop the Ukrainian drones.
Why can't our national government and military leaders proactively anticipate a threat like this in advance and strategically deploy comprehensive air defense systems, such as a heavy machine gun or something similar? I don't know, all around the country's largest oil refinery, specifically to effectively intercept and shoot down this incoming drone?
But in most cases, in Russia, shooting down targets is limited to just words. Recently, they claimed that they supposedly destroyed all the flamingos flying toward Vodkinsk. But this time, they modestly kept silent. Because long-range drones successfully bypassed their air defense system, they
really do have problems with air defense in such a deep rear area, primarily with detection systems. That is, all the radars and SAM systems are being moved to the front or transferred to the European territory of Russia. The same interceptor drones, which are still effective, have not appeared, nor have anti-aircraft drones on FPV platforms. It's the same situation, and
thanks to this, the path to Siberia is open.
With upgraded drones and Firepoint, now Siberia is also within reach of Ukrainian precision.
Our birds are getting closer and closer to the regions that provide Russia with about 40% of its oil production and over 75% of its natural gas. Upgraded drones are capable of covering distances of almost 3,500 kilometers and sending more and more Russian oil refineries in for scheduled repairs. More and more Russian oil refineries. Now in Omsk, everything is going according to plan as well. Lines at gas stations and prices rising faster than Russian air defense.
So we're not talking about some abstract percentages in analysts' reports, but about a very tangible effect. Lines at gas stations. A fuel shortage and a plant that just a month ago was considered untouchable.
And unlike Russia, which wages a brutal war against civilian residential buildings, educational schools, and sacred churches, Ukraine strikes directly at Putin's financial sponsors in this war and at the specific military tools that help him kill innocent people. There are no longer any safe coordinates on the entire territory of the Russian Federation of evil that are unreachable for Ukrainian justice. 5,000 of our drones per day, dozens of their oil refineries, tankers of the Shadow Fleet, and Russia's military infrastructure have all felt this for themselves. One should not encroach on Ukrainian statehood. We see these results every day. We see such precision every day. Some say that with modern technologies, we are sending Russia back to the Middle Ages. Some recall Napoleon, during whose time Moscow was burning. But for us, and I want everyone to know this, for Ukraine, what matters is not comparisons or grandstanding. What matters is real results.
So briefly, where do we stand as of mid-July? Russia physically cannot keep up with processing and selling the oil that it is forced to export. Tankers are sitting idle. Week after week, revenues are shrinking, but the budget cushion is not. In theory, EU sanctions pressure could amplify this effect by setting a price cap, but for now, it remains stuck at the stage of coordination among the 27 capitals. And it turns out that the effect of long-range strikes on oil refineries is now more tangible and faster than another round of negotiations in Brussels. Is what the Kremlin feared most finally beginning to happen? Not just sanctions, but a gradual loss of the ability to profit from its own oil. And if this trend continues, will Russia have enough money to keep financing the war at this pace? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. See you next time.